Morgan DeNicola. Wow, what an inspirational woman. She runs a foundation, the Denicola Family Foundation, where she helps so many. Her journey and her background's incredible. As a diplomat, as philanthropist, her parents made this great foundation of which she heads. We talk about some of her experiences of being a diplomat and going to Africa to these orphanages. This one particular incident when she holds a little child that her parents were that had died, and first time the child experienced blonde hair, and this other great experience where a diplomat came to the U.S. and her name's Morgan, and the diplomat or the presidential nominee thought she was a man by the name and wasn't, and was taken back, and what happened there. Fascinating discussion and what she does, and even in health and wellness and mental health, we talk about that. One of her triangle activities, tasks she does, and she has some strong opinions on some other topics like zoos like mental health, but just a great discussion with Morgan. And I hope to continue to do more work with her and her foundation. I find it to be great. I open up with the question of, when one wants to give, how do they choose? There's so many out there. How do you make the decision of where to choose to donate your time, money, efforts, etc.? Thanks for listening and watching. Hi, I'm Joey Pinz, and here's my 45-second introduction. After starting my business in the 90s, I started developing poor habits of eating in my diet because of working way too much. Before you know it, I found myself 340 pounds. The doctor told me if I don't lose the weight, I'm not going to see my daughter graduate. Took the next 7 months, lost 130 pounds. People think there's some secret. Ask me, how'd you lose that weight? Like there's some secret. There is no secret. How did I lose the weight? Just one word: discipline. I've had other successes in life, and I attribute them all to discipline. Now, I'm not the king of discipline, but I believe that it can help all of us. Friends, colleagues convinced me to start a podcast. The podcast mission: how do we better ourselves and society? I talk to interesting people in health, fitness, sport, wellness, business, technology, science, art, and culture. And I eventually ask them how discipline plays a role in their life. Podcast vision: growth through learning from others. Oh my goodness, Morgan, thank you so much for your time today. When somebody wants to donate and help, how should they make that selection?
I think first you need to know exactly what you want to accomplish, what it is that you want to be a part of. I think that's the hardest thing, is everybody just says they want to help, but they really got to dive down into what do you mean by help? And even if you say, oh, I want to help feed people. Okay, do you want to help feed children? Do you want to help the sustainability of feeding children, school lunch programs? So it's really kind of knowing exactly what it is you want to do, and then going out and seeing who nearby is doing those things and what it is about them that you like. So it's a lot more of knowing what it is that you want to contribute. A lot of people right now can't contribute financially. So it's like, what direction do you want to take? Do you want to volunteer time? Do you want to donate items? Do you want to donate ideas, perspectives? So I think it's knowing exactly what you want to do and finding somebody that's doing it already.
Do you want to connect with business leaders and engage consumers who take action? The Joey Pinz podcast delivers high-impact conversations to an audience of decision makers, entrepreneurs, and professionals across multiple industries. A fast-growing audience of highly engaged listeners, both B2B and B2C. Millions of listens and views across YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Brands that sponsor us see real engagement, conversations, and brand loyalty. Whether you're looking to sell a service, promote a product, or establish thought leadership, our sponsorships offer premium ad placements, exclusive episode sponsorships, full season branding, and event partnerships. Don't just advertise, become part of the conversation. Visit us at joeypins.com/sponsor to get started, or email us at sales@joeypins.com. Joey Pinz Podcast, where thought leaders, brands connect. Yeah, try not to reinvent the light bulb in these kinds of things. And your community generally is where people want to make the most impact. Their
Yes.
community.
Yeah, starting locally is where you build your network.
Mm.
So if you start really kind of close to home, you can see the results, you can feel the results, you can feel like you're really a part of it, and then continue to build your network. And then once you have continuing to build your network, you can start branching out. But I think staying local and close to begin with until you see what's out there, who's doing what, and kind of I like to piece together ideas. So, okay, this group over here is doing it this way. This group over here isn't. Let's see what works, what doesn't work, and then you can kind of have a little bit more of a broad scope of what's
Mm.
going on all around you.
Because there's so many,
There
Nicole,
are so
right?
many.
There's so many, and you hate. Well, I do. Saying yes to one and no to another. What do you mean? You hate children with sickness? No, it's not that. It's just I wanted to kind of devote. So it's very. And then of course there's. We do hear of some situations where money isn't allocated appropriately, so there's always that kind of doubt, and it's a tough way to go.
I think saying hard or no is like the hardest part
Mm,
about it, but you also have to have an understanding of there are limited funds, there's limited time. You are one human being.
mm,
So saying no, you don't have to say no. You can say not at this time. And it can be true, or give me a little bit of time, maybe I can connect you. That's why your network's so important. Maybe I can connect you with somebody that can help you at this time. It never
mm,
has to be like a full no, but if somebody says specifically I need a check for this amount of dollars and you don't have it, well, then it is a no.
mm.
But maybe you can circle back, or maybe I can introduce you to somebody that will be able to help you.
Now your nonprofit, right? You work with it with the cause, as you say, right?
The cause, yes.
Yes, and tell me about it. I mean, you've got extraordinary stories, Nicole, of where you've been in Africa and how you've helped, and tell me about your nonprofit.
Well, I work with my dad. My family has been so lucky, the cause, um, that both my parents are serial entrepreneurs. So we've been in everything from healthcare, technology, software in the box industry, talent management, chicken soup for the soul. We help in publications. We recently were a part of the Cabrini movie that came out. So we've
Wow.
been in everything. And I ended up going to Africa with some friends of my father. He wasn't able to go. And at this point, I'm only helping him out with marketing, in the nitty gritty of the business world. I go to this orphanage in Africa and I come back and say, my life has changed.
Mm,
My life's changed. Seeing the needs, seeing the children, seeing like really being a part of a different part of the world, I came back and was like, "Dad," luckily, the cause is always willing to listen. "Mom, Dad, we've been so lucky. I need to do more with my life. I need to give more. Let's figure out a way to do it." And my parents said, "Absolutely. We have been blessed beyond words."
mm.
And they've always been parts of charity. They've always been doing things like that, but they were, "Hey, let's start a little charity." So it started as Cosmo Cares, a very small, charitable group. We were going around just doing things locally in Philadelphia. And then through the process of selling some of our businesses, we were able to actually create now a foundation, really have a little bit more financial support behind us. And then we created the Denicola Family Foundation. And that's when we started to kind of branch out globally. But we still very, very much are involved in our local community, in the United States, and then we just do small things here and there overseas.
So the difference between a charity and a foundation is what?
Money, support, a network. We're a self-sustaining foundation.
Ah.
So as much as we love donations, love partners, absolutely we can have a bigger impact. We are lucky enough that we are self-sustaining from our businesses. So we can exist and still have an impact, but of course we want partners and sponsors and donors because then
Mm.
our reach can be on a much larger scale.
Hmm. Yeah, because I hear friends, people say like the Red Cross, for example, they pay the CEO gets paid, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Why would I donate to somebody like that? And of course, the answer is that CEO is getting donations from big corporations for millions of dollars. That's why they're getting it. It's kind of the quick answer. So people kind of have to look beyond that.
Absolutely. I personally, I going into this world took a salary cap. I will only for the rest of my life, no matter how many donors, no matter how big we grow, because my job is to make sure we continue to grow. I
Mm,
will only be making a certain amount of money, and it is humble.
mm,
Because we have the belief that if you are in this philanthropic world, if you are in this charitable world, that is what you have chosen to do, and that our money should be going to helping people. That is ultimately our goal. And since 2016, you've seen this downfall in person to person donations because of that lack of trust,
right,
because you're hearing somebody's making six figures and you're like, wow, I don't want to then give them my dollar a day
right.
because that goes to paying this or paying that or their overhead and not really their programs. So I completely understand that, and that's why with our family foundation, we are transparent. If we say, "Hey, I see you gave me $100. This $100 is going, the entirety of it
Mm,
is going to go to school supplies or pantry programs or whatever it is program we're doing that day that you chose to give us the money for." We make sure that everything else, our overhead for the year is already paid for. Nobody's dollars are going to pay my salary, my coworkers. No. Everything goes directly to our programs. And luckily there's a good amount of foundations and charities out there that give you that
mm,
transparency, that give
mm.
you a peek behind the curtain to see exactly where your dollar would be going.
Morgan, you mentioned that you went to Africa and then it changed your life, but you have this wonderful story where you were holding a child and she touched your hair for the first time. And can you walk me through that again? It's
That
wonderful.
was, an orphanage that actually was run by Buddhist monks in Africa.
That's right.
Sounds very
Yes.
interesting and complex. And the children there, either both of their parents have passed due to HIV or AIDS, or they themselves, both their parents passed, but they also either have HIV and AIDS. And her name was
Mm,
Comfort, and she was around 2 years old, and she hadn't smiled since she had been in the orphanage. And she just looks so sad. And I picked her up. I couldn't help it, but picked her up, and she is just staring at my hair in a ponytail. And I was like, I didn't even think about this, but here's this blonde
mm,
hair,
mm,
you know.
mm,
So I took my hair out of the ponytail, and she's just staring at it, and I rubbed my hair on her face, and this big smile just comes across her face, and then I smile, and my heart just swells, and I couldn't put her down. I think the people that ran the orphanage were like, "Okay, she needs to go eat now, like, you have to put her down." I would have taken her home, but in that moment, just that she smiled, that she was a kid for a second,
mm.
I'll never forget that. I will for that was the moment actually that I changed and went home and was like, "There's something that simple." I think people forget that those very, very small moments can mean the world to not only you, but people around you.
And you also mentioned the dynamics of that orphanage where they were asking you if there was like if cannibalism was going to be involved. Where are you going? I mean, it was just we just can't fathom that here in the States.
Well, we went there. It was actually a one of my cultural diplomacy trips.
Mm,
We had gone there with members of government to speak with other members of government in that place in that area of the of Africa on how to explain to these local villagers that just because these were monks, they hadn't seen people from China before. They hadn't seen understood what a monk is, and they just see this group that doesn't really talk, kind of coming in and taking their kids. And for some reason they kept thinking that they were taking the kids to eat them.
uh,
Um and the monks and the people who ran the orphanage were trying to explain, like, we don't even eat meat, you know, and trying to explain, like, no, 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 the kids will, once they get this education and they can get treatment, they will be coming back. They come back to the villages, and so we were trying to give the local government their ideas on how to communicate, on how to keep these relations with the local villagers positive. And over the course of time, we actually donated a mobile medical van to that orphanage. So that
Wow.
way, every weekend, they would bring basic medical care and food and water to these villagers from the orphanage to be like, hey, see, we're not stealing your kids. We're not here. Here's food. Here's malaria netting. Here's all of these things. And then the kids would come home for weekends and see everybody. But the villagers also were going back to the orphanage to try to take the kids out, like uncles, aunts, distant relatives, to try to marry them off.
Mm,
And the individuals that were trying to give them an education and other options than being a child bride or so we kind of were intervening and trying to get this relationship of, hey, when they get this education and they return home, because they will return home, then they can decide what it is they will want to do. But it was a very touch and go situation because you also don't want to ever insult another culture's culture.
right.
So it was figuring out ways to have these dialogues, but also protect these children and educate these children. So it was a very tedious and but like beautiful thing to be a
Mm,
part of.
mm. No wonder it was life changing. I mean, just hearing that and trying to, trying to formulate it in my mind is wonderful. You mentioned diplomacy and culture, another uh, wonderful aspect of your life, Morgan. But you have this one particular story where a president from another country that you don't want to mention, you had to kind of take them on a tour here in the States, and your name being Morgan, I think you assumed that, or they assumed that you were a male. You obviously are not, and, it was a little touchy in the beginning, but it ended up being working out pretty well.
Yes, I work a lot with different embassies around the world, different kings, queens, presidents, and having the name Morgan can either benefit you,
Mm,
um, or be a very confusing thing for people. A lot of the times I'll go places and my name tag will be Mr. Morgan.
hmm,
Um, and they're always very shocked to see me. But yes, my job was to bring this presidential candidate around Washington to meet different individuals to kind of plead his case as to why he wanted the support for when he ran for president. And the second he walked into the door, it was very clear that he thought that I was a male,
hmm,
and he comes from a part of the world that it is not common for a woman to be in any position of power or authority or anything along those lines. And I could tell, and this was my first experience with this particular moment, so my heart kind of dropped and
mm,
slightly went into panic mode. But you have to kind of think
yes.
and maintain calm and that understanding of this is a person from another part of the world and they have every right to feel the way that they do. It's a cultural difference again. And I had a moment of being a little clever, and we had assigned a translator to him. And I said to the translator, listen, I know you cannot tell me anything that is being said. I'm not going to ask you that. I said, but can you tell me tones?
Mm,
If this person is upset or angered, and kind of blindly guide me in helping the situation of alleviating any kind of anger or upset feelings. So the translator was wonderful and was like, yes, obviously can't say anything, but I can help you in that sense. Um, so I was just very respectful, very calm. I made sure I walked behind them I made sure
Mm,
that I didn't make extended eye contact because I do respect. I think it's very difficult for us. We think that immediately other people should respect us, give respect, get respect.
right.
I believe that the initial thing should be you should give respect to somebody that is not
Fascinating. Right.
from our area and through that course of me being very respectful and not pushing my presence on this individual, but having an understanding of it, I could feel him warming up. He sat next to me at one point, and that's a big moment.
Wow.
And he looked at me and at one point shook my hand, and these are big steps for him,
Mm,
and
mm,
I appreciated those moments. And at the end of the day, I calmed down, he calmed down, and I am very much still in touch with his staff. And when he comes back, he's asked me to help show him around when he comes back to the states, and we have a really mutually respectful relationship. But again, it had to start with somebody showing that respect, and it was me, and it wasn't a big deal really. It was an exercise of self-confidence
mm.
and self-control.
When you were when you asked the translator would translate everything he was saying to you. He just wouldn't translate what he was saying to the translator or not to you, correct?
He had staff there,
Okay.
so whenever he was talking to
I see.
his staff, it's like whispering, it's,
Right.
so
Mm,
unless it was something that was directed towards me, the
mm,
translator could not tell me what
mm,
was being said, nor did I ask him to. I would never do that.
mm,
Um, but it was more of is he happy? Is he sad?
mm.
Nudge me if he's sad. Nudge
Fascinating.
me if he's annoyed. Nudge me
Mm,
if there's something that I could be doing more. So it would be like, you know, he's agitated. Oh, okay. I'll kind of deduce what am I doing in this situation or what is going on this in this situation, and you'd kind of put the pieces together and be like, okay, well, I am walking very close, or I am kind of interjecting myself in the conversation. Let me just kind of take a moment and step back and let me be more of an observer. And that was kind of the give and take of
wow.
that relationship. And I mean, it worked out very, very well for both of us.
Mm. I'm from the Northeast like yourself, and when growing up, many of my friends were sons and daughters of immigrants, and so their parents would speak to them in their language, and it was always interesting to me when I was in the room, if their voice got a little quiet and they didn't make eye contact with me, I could say, "Okay, they're saying something about," it's always that kinda awkward moment where you're not quite sure what's going on. You don't have to hear the words, but you can kinda understand bit what's happening, but this is very different now because you're in a diplomatic situation. He's got staff there, and the dynamics are just greatly different.
Yeah, that happens a lot. I work a lot with people that there is a language barrier. I only speak English, but I
Mm,
do. My grandfather's Italian.
yes.
I do come from a family that speaks other languages,
Mm,
but I only speak English, and but I'm very good at reading a room.
right, right,
So it is easy to tell, like you said, if they're not looking or
right,
the
right.
voice changes or even the tone. I mean, the
Yes,
tone in a conversation in another language, you can tell when it changes. So a
right.
lot of the times I read body language, and I read the feeling of the room and look for somebody to look at me without staring at somebody, just kind of like,
Mm.
oh, they're making eye contact. Okay, this somehow has something to do with me, and kind of reading the room.
Do you think if that presidential candidate had known that more about you, like had met your wife or any of the kind of personal, do you think that would have changed directions too?
I Yes. I mean, where he came from, if he knew I was married to a woman, I think that would have it might have been a deal breaker, but I half of my job is to not assume.
Right.
But where they came from, yeah. But his some of his staff are now friends with me on social media, so
Great.
it is very clear that I am married to a woman, and they
Huh.
still interact with me on social media, his staff, and don't seem to have a problem with it at all. At least his staff doesn't, and they still, like I said, engage with me if they're in the States. But I think that's a big part of what we all should be doing in society, is
Hmm.
trying not to jump to those conclusions. And just because the part of the world that he is in, it's a big no-no, doesn't necessarily mean he believes that. I think that we're always so quick to assume somebody's from a different part, even in the United States. So somebody's from Texas, they must be like this, or California, they must be like this, or Philly, they must be like this.
Hmm.
I think we have a tendency to do that, but a lot of the times it's not always the case. And once people get to know you, I like to say that our job is to be an example as to why somebody's opinion might be wrong, rather than just telling somebody your opinion's wrong, or
Hmm.
telling somebody this is how they should be. You're an example. You always have an opportunity to be an example. So I try to remind myself of that when in any situation. I want to be an example of how some Americans are, or
Hmm.
some gay women are, or some, and to always present yourself in a manner that's, well, me, but
Hmm.
also I might be able to disprove a preconceived notion. But in doing that, you also have to kind of put your own preconceived notions
Hmm.
to the side. And I think we all have a hard, like, I still do it. I'll be told, like, "Oh, you're gonna go here, or you're gonna meet," and I'm like, "Ooh, well, what about this?" And then it's like, "Wait a minute, you heard that once on the internet," and you're kind of jumping to your own conclusion, rather than just saying, "You know what, let's go as an open blank slate and just see." Most of the time, I know me personally, most of the time I'm wrong with preconceived notions.
Hmm. Well, I could tell you this, Morgan. It warms my heart, makes me happy to think that you resent. You were the main gate. You represented our nation to this person. I can't think of a better person to do so. So just like that small child was first introduced to blonde hair, we're all human, Morgan, and cultures are cultures, but we can all still live together very well. That's for sure. So as far as the foundation and your diplomacy work, do they still work hand in hand?
Yes, my work is, it's kind of like a triangle. So I run our family foundation, and that's my philanthropic endeavors. And then I also sit on the board with my diplomatic work, the NGO that works with the United Nations, and embassies around the world. And then, I help out with businesses, and I sit on a few other boards, Elmwood Park Zoo board. It's wonderful. I love it. Reed's Organic Farm out in Jersey, where I'm trying to help them teach people about the importance of farming, but also eating healthy and cooking healthy. So I also sit as an advisor to a lot of different
Hmm.
organizations and try to help them find their way. But my main purpose, my main job, is to run our family foundation and try to represent the entirety of my family. I come from a very diverse family, different religions, different ethnicities, different backgrounds. So I absolutely love trying to represent my family as a whole, because we're a very eclectic
Hmm.
group of people.
You mentioned NGO, which is a non-governmental organization, and also you're working. It seems that you mentioned the triangle, but just the natural extension to all of this is just general mental health, where we have a serious issue here in the United States.
Yeah, absolutely. And you see it in business, you see it in philanthropy and charity, and you just see it in everybody in everyday life. We're not really taking care of ourselves physically and mentally, and that's, in my opinion, it crosses over to our ability to be diplomatic, to be open, to be empathetic, to be
Mm,
understanding. I think in a lot of ways we've been cutting one another off because we don't like the stresses that having these complicated relationships or conversations. So I have this running theory that kind of is the more that you're able to engage with people whose opinions differ from yours, whose viewpoints differ from yours, the more you do that, the more your anxieties of being in rooms with different people or having difficult conversations kind of lessen. And in the process of doing that, your depression of feeling isolated or misunderstood or alone also starts to go away
mm,
because you start to realize you can connect with anyone, and you can connect with people that are the polar opposite of you, and it becomes easier to find those things that make you all human, that you can connect with a person that is different from you, and you won't lose your temper. It won't give you anxiety. It won't make you kind of react. You'll be able to have these more thoughtful, calm
mm,
interactions with
mm.
anybody that you'll be in a room with.
Yeah, I'm afraid not most of us, but some of us, just the kind of polarization where people kind of dig into an a point, to a point of view, even if they know they're wrong, and there's anger and there's all these bits, and I don't know how much of it if it's really true and what's not, but it is being displayed a lot, and that's just not good for mental health. And we've seen it. We've seen major athletes. We saw in the Olympics, not this Olympics, but past. I know you wanted to be an Olympic athlete at one point, and just say, "Look, I'm not gonna. I have issues now, and I'm not actually gonna perform. I'm not gonna compete in this event." And we see it more. We even see musicians and the coming out. So there's definitely more talk about it. It's getting better, but it's not where it should be.
Yes, I mean, and people still there's still kind of that feeling around it of it being kind of something that we shouldn't talk
Right,
about,
taboo. Yeah.
or that therapy is a bad thing.
Mm,
I'm in therapy. Most of the people I know are in therapy, and it's a beautiful thing to have a neutral party be able to tell
mm,
you where you might be having distorted perceptions, where you might be having issues. And a lot of the times we're not eating the way we should, which our gut
mm,
health has a lot to do with our mental health. We're not sleeping enough because our brains are going, because we're not active enough during the day. We're not really getting to a point where we really are taking care of ourselves a little bit more, or putting ourselves first. And I think we should be putting ourselves first, but also putting ourselves first without kind of shoving other people to the side or
mm,
saying that's not as important as this, or that. And I think a big thing is that personal accountability. If you are having some issues, you need to acknowledge that you're having issues. You need to have honesty with yourself, but then you need to take those steps to actually work with whatever it is that you have that issue with. Like I have borderline personality disorder. And for years, I just kind of used as an excuse when I would snap or have a
mm.
distorted perception. It would be like, oh, I'm sorry. I have borderline personality. It becomes an excuse
Scapegoat. Yeah.
until you are like, you know what? Wait, I'm the problem. And I need to now be honest with myself and take the steps to do the work to make sure that I'm not doing these things, that these things over here, they're my triggers. Those are my responsibilities. And I need to figure out why they are and how to work with that. And I think a lot of us don't really take the personal accountability and the steps that are necessary to really make sure we're productive members of the world around us, and that we're not just using these things as excuses to not really fulfill our personal potential.
Your brand deserves to be in front of the right audience decision makers, entrepreneurs, and professionals who are ready to take action. That's exactly who listens to the Joey Pinz podcast. Thousands of engaged business leaders and consumers tune in every week. Millions of views and listens across YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Sponsors see real impact, higher engagement, brand trust, and conversations. We offer strategic partnerships tailored to your goals, including targeted ad placements, branded guest appearances, multi-episode and event sponsorships. Make your brand part of the conversation. Let's grow together. Visit joeypins.com/sponsor to explore sponsorship opportunities, or email us at sales@joeypins.com. The Joey Pinz podcast, where brands and thought leaders connect. Yeah, I like what you said there. The kind of confidence, arrogance kind of line there, it's a big thing. And asking for help is tough for some people. You saw you had something, you get help for it, you kind of used it as a leaning mechanism, and now you're taking accountability for it. It's not an easy pivot for many.
Oh, no. I mean, luckily I've become very good friends with my therapist, but I mean, the amount of times that poor man, the amount of times that I yelled at him and I was
Really?
like, "You don't know what you're talking about."
Wow.
And I mean, like, kind of if I could have flipped a desk, I would have,
Ah.
like, completely unhinged and stormed out of his office. Like, what a quack, and then reflected, calmed down, and was like, "Wait a minute. I think he's onto something." And
Mm.
kind of did that text message, "Hey, so
Oops.
I might have overreacted a little. And, would you still be willing to see me? I'd love to come back in next week." And he'd be like, "Absolutely." It became, and it's even a joke with my dad, because sometimes there will be a moment where I'll be like, "Are you kidding?" And he's like, "Do you need a minute?" And I'm like,
Mm.
"Yes, I do. I apologize for that. I might have slightly overreacted." But it's that knowing yourself, taking the steps to kind of work through all of that and continue to improve. I mean, we are beings that have this elasticity to continue. It's almost our obligation to continue to improve
Mm.
and to continue to grow and learn through our experiences and our interactions with other people. And it's like we owe that to ourselves and we owe it to the world around us. But you need to be honest. You need to be honest with yourself and go through those motions of figuring out how to really be the best version of yourself. And to want to be in those, you have to be uncomfortable to grow, right?
Yes. Yes.
I think that's, working out, d- building a business. There are always going to be those moments that you are ridiculously uncomfortable and you're like, I don't want to be uncomfortable. But in order to have any of that growth or that experience, you have to be really uncomfortable, and you get used to that, and then those uncomfortable moments can almost be exciting. Of this is a moment of growth. I'm uncomfortable. Great. I feel awful in this moment, but that something really great can come out of this.
Yeah, your humility is refreshing and welcoming and wonderful. And it's true. I mean, if I stop learning, Morgan, I die. Me personally, I've got to continue to grow. I also like what you said. I don't want to overlook kind of those three pillars of nutrition, sleep, and exercise that help mental health. I mean, nutrition in this country is just, bad food is so accessible and inexpensive, and
Mhm.
you've got to really actively fight against it. And just regular exercise and sleep is just so important to your mental health. I know you have a specific viewpoint on zoos, and it's a little bit controversial, so I'd like to hear it.
Well, I'm lucky enough that the zoo that I sit on, the animals that are in our facilities, they can't be released into the wild for all different kinds of
Ah,
reasons. They're either health reasons or they were born in captivity.
I see.
And yeah, so there, a lot of people are like, "Oh, zoos are jails for animals." I mean, some are.
Hmm.
And then there are other that there's this accreditation called the AZA, and they make sure the standards of care in zoos and aquariums are at the top tier. So if you are going to visit a zoo, see if it's AZA accredited.
Hmm.
It's kind of then you'll know the care of those animals is top tier. But our zoo focuses on education. It is an educational facility, and it's to teach you about conservation and these animals that cannot be re-released to the wild. And we also do breeding programs, so they're breed to release.
Hmm.
So if it's an endangered species, we're breeding them, and then when they're able to, they get let go. We're trying to encourage this growth. So it's education, conservation, and then the growth of these species. But our zoo gives you a lot of peeks behind the curtain. We're one of the first zoos that we have a surgical room that you can
Wow.
actually see. Like, people coming into the main building can see some of the procedures we do on animals: x-rays, teeth cleanings, not too graphic procedures. And we also show you behind the scenes of like how we feed our animals, and we give you this transparency
Hmm.
into the importance of the preservation of these animals, and why zoos are actually very necessary. Because if you don't, we care, we have a tendency to care more when we've experienced it, right?
Mm.
So if we hear a certain breed of tiger is dying out in the wild, it's like, oh, that's sad. Now when you see it, you kind of have this moment of like, oh wait, I've seen one of those. I had this really great experience learning about one of those. Wow, that's devastating. I have more of an emotional response and a need to kind of learn more about this or be a part of the solution of this. Experience is so important in our how we view the world. And zoos are a great way for kids and adults to experience these animals that we wouldn't normally have any type of interaction with,
Hmm.
and the importance, because we're continuing to grow as a society, so we're getting closer and closer to these wild animals whether we like it or not. And having this knowledge of these animals and having this respect and having this idea of how can I take care of my interactions with these animals, or how I can help and not hinder.
Hmm.
So I do have a deep love for zoos, and I do get a lot of slack for it because I'm an animal advocate and lover. So you hear, how can you say you're an animal advocate and help a zoo? Um, I that those are the reasons why I am an animal lover and advocate. Is my experience through a lot of zoos
For you.
have been wonderful,
Hmm.
and they continue to get better. I mean, we learn more about better ways of enrichment for animals, better technologies for helping animals, and how to work and live with them. So yeah, I know it goes either way. Either people are like, that's really cool and that's a unique perspective, or I'm a betrayer of the animals around the world.
You can't make everybody happy, Morgan.
No, you can't. I try. I try very
Do
hard, but
you?
you can't.
So, if somebody wants to engage with the Denicola Foundation, how do they do so?
We have our own website, the Denicola Family Foundation. There is a beautiful landing page that you fill out whatever it is you want to say to us, if it's a program or questions or donations, and then those get sent directly into my inbox. So you would be speaking directly with me. There aren't 15 people between you and me.
Hmm.
It is me. And we also have an Instagram and a Facebook page. And if you message the Denicola Family Foundation on Instagram or Facebook, that is also me. So
Wow.
you are speaking directly to me, and it's a safe place for anybody to message with concerns or thoughts or potential program ideas. So I welcome, or hey, I'm feeling lonely. Just reach out. We're all human. And yeah, I'd love to hear from all communities.
Now you've met like ex presidents. There's a story with the Clintons, and like you give. Is it true? Did I hear this right? You give out awards at the Super Bowl.
Yes, we have the Steinberg Denicola Humanitarian Award. And For the people out there who don't know who Lee Steinberg is, there was a movie called Jerry Maguire that is based off Lee.
Hmm.
So our family became very good friends with Lee. We also work very closely with equity sports. So we represent a lot of athletes as well. And we decided to start a humanitarian award to recognize not only players, but coaches and
Hmm.
staff, even like front staff, office workers that are have their own charities or just are rock stars in their community, giving back to their communities and being this example of how they can help other people. So we have every weekend before the Super Bowl, we go to the host city
Wow.
and we award these humanitarian awards to different members of the NFL community. And we have a big, fun, beautiful party, and it's a great time. We also have the Brain Health Forum beforehand, and it speaks a lot about concussion protocols as well as the mental health of athletes. And they do these deep dives into the brain health of athletes. And those awards that we give, we are going to be branching into, well, it will just be the Denicola Awards, but we are branching out into sciences and healthcare. So not only will we be working with NFL players, continuing that, but we will also be helping people who are researching different diseases or doctors or staff that are out there every day really giving back to their communities in terms of healthcare.
How wonderful. Morgan, has there been anything in the last month or so that you changed your mind on?
Hmm. Changed my mind on. Um, no, I think not changed my mind on. I think that I've been personally in the last month tried a lot more in the sense of I love finding the silver lining and kind of everyone's human
Wow.
and being very loving. And I think that, like you said, the polarization
Hmm.
and the frustrations are kind of getting louder and louder, and it gets very hard to
It does.
continue to try to be that um, positive voice of everyone's human
Mm.
and love one
Mm.
another. But I think that just kind of makes me stronger in that, and saying that that isn't the ultimate need right now,
Hmm.
is for us to remember that, and rather than screaming at our neighbors or being excessively aggressive, to really kind of activate that self-control in us. And I know it's been not only for me, because I have a lot of friends reach out almost on a daily basis with that kind of burnout that I'm seeing a lot. Um, it's getting harder, I think, for people to maintain calm. But I like to say that a lot of it is social media, a
Hmm.
lot of
It
it
is.
is the news. So I feel like when I get to that point and I'm living in the news and I'm turning it on every morning and have it with
Mm.
my coffee, it's I turn it off a little bit more. And social media, I've kind of backed off a little bit more because I feel like because of the algorithms of it, we'll tend to click on things that get us emotionally worked up, and then
Mm.
you just get flooded with it. So it's been a trying month, but I think that if anything, it's reminding us to slow down,
Hmm.
find a way to connect with one another, find a way to disconnect with electronics if need be, and to remember those things that are important, and to remind us all that we really are at the end of the day human, and we really are seeking the same things. We're just kind of going about it different ways. So my opinions haven't changed. I've just been a little bit more exhausted.
perhaps more empathetic. The thing is, angry people will keep watching, and that's ultimately what they want, you know.
Yeah.
So it's tough. Was there a particular event that made you kind of relax a little bit, saying, "Okay, this has just gone too far; it's ridiculous," or was it just a kind of a gradual thing that you
It was
realized?
gradual. It's just kind of everything that's going on, and, when I get to that point of I don't wanna say imploding, but that's
Mm,
kind of how you feel. You
mm,
just feel like, you're not having the impact in the on the world around you that you want to. You feel like you're, pushing that boulder up the hill and there is no top of the hill.
mhm.
Uh, that's when I bake. So I actually found myself, back in the kitchen because I like to say when you're cooking or you're baking, your brain has to focus on what it is you're doing or you are going to start a fire.
Yeah,
So I call it my food therapy, my food time. And Italians, we show love in our
sure
food.
do.
Absolutely. So I tried to bake this cake for my dad, and it was
Oh,
this, yeah, it was an almond ricotta cake, and I
wonderful.
nailed it.
Great.
I never tried it before, but my dad was like, "Hey, do you think you can try this?" And I was like, "You know what? I do. I need to bake. I need to disconnect. I need to walk away from the phone, the TV, and I put my heart into that cake."
Good for you.
And everybody loved it, and so, like, I felt good, and I had that moment of, like, shutting everything off and out, and then putting my heart and soul into this cake that I was able to give somebody. So I think that for me, when I need that reset, it's either a nap or baking.
Ah! Do both. Do you find yourself, Morgan, your general approach to life, is it more art or science? The reason why I ask is because, I like to cook. I don't really like to bake that much. I see baking more of a science. It's like this temperature, these ingredients, this time, whereas kind of cooking is, I change it every time and I don't even remember what I put in.
I say baking is chemistry you can eat. It
Ah,
entirely is. Baking is a science, but baking is more when I need my brain to shut off.
I see.
Because that is a science. It is, you have your
Measurements.
recipe and you go, cooking, yes, you're definitely a little bit more willy-nilly with it, and you can have more fun and, um, listen to music and have a glass of wine.
Mm,
Absolutely.
mm,
Baking, I need to, like, hone in.
wow.
But I guess it depends on my mood. So sometimes I want the cooking aspect,
Mm,
and
mm.
my wife, she's back in school actually, for accounting, but she's in the service industry, so my wife can plate a meal
Whoa.
so much better than me.
Whoa.
She creates these beautiful plates and, like, we'll put it in front of you, and I'm like, Here's my chaos dinner." Like, so we love, that's a bonding thing for both of
That's
us in the
wonderful.
kitchen. It's like I'll cook it and she'll plate it.
That's quite a duo right there because I don't plate well, and I the food I like to think is great, but yeah, I just don't. It doesn't present well. I don't really know understand how it should relate to the plate. That's a really nice skill to have.
Yeah, I'm always impressed. And then, like, she'll even, like, cut a sandwich and put the one slice on top of the other one and, like,
Whoa!
present it all beautifully, and I'm like, "Look at the
Wow!
effort that she just put into this, like, this is wild."
Wow.
Yeah, we have a lot of fun in the kitchen, kinda yelling at each other to get out of the way and then trying to create, whatever it is. But yeah, I definitely depends on my mood whether it's baking or cooking.
Mm. What I like about cooking more is I get into that kitchen, it's relatively clutter free and clean, and I start pulling ingredients out, and I don't know what I kind of have an idea, but let's see what the ingredient. I never go out and get ingredients. Let's see what we got, make it. I start feeding people. I clean as I go. Everybody gets fed, and then everything gets put away, and I get to walk away from the kitchen the way it came. And in my life, in my professional life, I never get to see a project from beginning to end like that. I'm always subbing parts out and, managing things. So it's also a wonderful accomplishment as
Absolutely.
well. Yeah.
Absolutely. The creation,
Mm.
even the cleaning. There's
Yes,
something incredibly
it
therapeutic
is.
about the clean, like,
It
"Look
is.
how clean I just got this pan
Yes.
that I
Yes.
completely
Yes.
caked
I agree.
stuff on," and
That's
it's a cleansing of yourself and the camaraderie of being in the kitchen with people is so much fun.
It is.
Yeah, it's always a good time, good energy, because even if you mess up, people are laughing at
Exactly.
you, and
Exactly.
it's
Yeah.
kind of it's a group thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. I love it. And those days that you're just like, let's see what we have,
Right. Right.
and let's just I love those days.
Yeah.
They're a
Yeah.
good time.
Yeah, it may not work every time, but it eventually does work because, we're all together and we're having a good time and, don't eat it if you don't like it, So, uh, there's gonna be some
Absolutely.
parts you like. So I started my business in the 90s, Morgan. I'm from the Northeast. I'm from out of Connecticut near New York and was working way too hard, putting my health in the back seat. I was in my 20s, and I'm sitting in front of the doctor at 340 pounds, and she tells me, uh, I've always been about 200, 190, 185 in high school. And, if you don't lose this weight, you're not going to see your daughter graduate. So my daughter was just born, scared the living, daylights out of me. I'm driving home, punching the steering wheel. How did I do this to myself? So I spent the next 6, 7 months, lost about 130 pounds, kept it off. You can't look at it as a finishing line. You mentioned the nutrition, exercise, sleep. So when I tell this story, people always say, "What's your secret? What you doing?" There's no secret. Discipline. That's how I did it. Motivation, routine, etc. How does discipline play a role in your life, Morgan?
It's every day, especially with somebody who has a personality disorder, depression, and anxiety disorder.
Mm,
Um, Waking up in the morning, getting yourself out of bed and into a routine every morning is a challenge.
hmm,
But such routine, even though you can get out of it, but routine is so important. Something
hmm,
like making your bed, drinking your cup of coffee
hmm,
can be like, okay, these are the steps that I need to, and then this process, I'm going to clear my mind. You need to have that discipline of, I'm going to get up at this time. I'm going to have my coffee. I'm going to drink my green drink with all my vegetables to make sure that I'm getting my probiotic in me. And then I'm going to go get on the treadmill. It has to go that way.
mm,
And you have to have that kind of dedication. So you have that familiar routine of,
mm,
all right, my mind's going to clear as I get on the treadmill, and I'm going to think about my day. And since I'm on the treadmill, I'm not going to get overwhelmed, because if I start to get overwhelmed, I'll just run a lot faster. But every day for me, it has to be a discipline, or you go back into old habits.
mm,
The way our brains work is familiar pathways. They're comfortable. It's so comfortable, and if I get to the point that I am not regimented in what I am doing, I can get back to a point that I just disconnect, and I sit on the sofa and I'm not thinking about anybody else. I'm thinking about how anxious I am. I'm thinking about how sad I am. I'm thinking about the terrors of the world and how I'm not having a positive impact. Your brain kind of starts to
mm,
spiral.
mm,
But
mm,
if you have that discipline of, this is what I'm
mm,
going to do, okay, got off the treadmill, get ready for my day, get into work mode and move, things get easier, and it becomes more of like, I know I can overcome this. I know I can handle this situation. I got through everything that I normally can get through. Now, that's not to say that you don't have a day where I travel a lot, so those days I can't do
right.
certain things, but it's then, okay, you have your traveling rituals, getting up and meditating.
Mm,
You need to just never give up on yourself, and in order to do that, you need to kind of have that discipline.
hmm.
Absolutely, because the second you don't have it, you're kind of giving up on you and whatever your potential could be.
Given your parents' background and immigrants and serial entrepreneurs, was discipline instilled as a child, or was it just kind of assumed?
No, I mean, my parents had it, so my dad worked all the time.
Right.
He still came to, my sporting events and stuff like that, but my dad worked a lot, and so did my mom. My mom was hand in hand with my dad. So we had our chores that we were supposed to get done, but discipline, not so much. It was more like the only discipline was like keep your room and be quiet if we're on a
Mm,
conference call.
mm,
um, and I don't think that I started getting into the discipline until I kind of hit my rock bottom.
mm.
Because there was a point that I was so depressed and so uh, just negative and anxious that I think I had, like, at that point cut out all of not cut out my friends, but my friends kind of left.
Wow.
Um, and I just stayed home and I started to become agoraphobic. I was like, I don't want to leave the house because what if this or what if that? And you just kind of, it wasn't until I hit my bottom and I wasn't really working and I wasn't leaving the house and I wasn't hanging out with anybody and I was just kind of living in this state of absolute dread of just existing,
Hmm.
that was when I started having those conversations with the therapist, was when I started realizing you need those disciplines.
Hmm.
You need those rituals. You need to learn who you are and what you need to be doing to be better. And there's nothing wrong with saying, I want to be better. It's not like poo pooing on who you are at that time. You need to find the self love. So I
Hmm.
like to say, I loved myself then. I love myself now. And I'm going to love who I'm going to be because I will ever be forever changing.
Hmm.
And I'm going to love myself the entirety. But I'm also going to push myself to be better because every day you should. And without that discipline of pushing yourself,
Hmm.
you're going to get stagnant. And you're never going to know. You're never going to know. Can I do that? Could I do that? How about that? It's you'll never know. And then I think it's a lot worse to live in the what if than in the I might have messed that up. I think it's a lot better to live in the well, I kind of messed that up than I should have. I don't like the I should have's. That's boring.
Hmm. Looking for a powerful way to reach business leaders and engage consumers? The Joey Pinz podcast connects brands like yours with an audience that listens, engages, and takes action. High impact exposure with a fast growing loyal audience. Millions of views and listens across major platforms. Sponsors see increased brand awareness, trust, and conversations. We make sponsorships simple and effective with custom ad placements that fit your brand, deep audience engagement through authentic conversations, long-term exposure across podcast platforms and social media. Don't miss the opportunity to connect with your ideal customers. Visit joeypins.com/sponsor to secure your sponsorship today. Or you can email us at sales@joeypins.com. The Joey Pinz podcast, where conversations drive results. Wonderful sentiment. It's your journey is inspiring. What motivates you, Morgan?
Um, joy.
Hmm.
Joy motivates me. Happiness to have come from a place where every day was so doom and gloom and sad, and I never felt like I was contributing anything to now being a joy. Like people are happy to hear from me.
Mm.
People are happy uh when I'm able to help out and then I feel good. There's so much potential for joy in every day, even in your worst day,
Mm.
but it's on you to find it and to do it. And I think that's what we don't realize is even in our worst day, you can find happiness. You can find you can be happiness for somebody else, which will make you happy, which is the crazier thing is if you bring joy to somebody else, you'll be happy.
Mm.
I can guarantee that. So every day I'm motivated by the like, who can I make smile or laugh or make their day just a little bit better? And it doesn't have to even be you doing something crazy or even leaving the house. If it's a day that you're like, no, I want to be a shut in. Fine. Okay. If that's how you're feeling, but you still can bring joy to another person.
Sure can. Yeah.
It's not a very difficult thing. It's a very, very easy thing and you get good at it and it feels good.
Mm.
And then you're like, okay, now on to the next. It kind of gets, it's like a healthy addiction. Um, to be happy. It's a healthy addiction.
So, given that motivation, Morgan, of joy and happiness, how do you measure success?
I measure success and impact. So if I even slightly impact another person's day, I've been successful.
Hmm.
It's it's not something that's super measurable. Like, I can't really say it's never in dollars. I'm
Hmm.
sorry. I don't agree with that. It's not in dollars. It's in whatever goal you've had. If you have a goal to impact somebody, it's kind of like, okay, I want to make my brother laugh today. I don't know how I'm going to do it. But if I can, that's my goal. I've set out to have a positive impact on somebody else. It's not yeah, I don't think there's any type of metric for it. I just like to say that I really strive every day, even with my wife. My day is not done unless I've made her laugh.
Ah,
I have made her laugh every day of our relationship and forever. Even if she's incredibly angry at me, I'm like, oh, she's going to be annoyed, but I'm going to make her laugh by the end of today. I don't know how, but it's going to happen. Um, yeah, so I think that any kind of positive impact I can have at the end of the day, I've done good. I've done well.
yeah, it's always a deeper challenge, when they're angry at you. When my girlfriend's upset with me, I say, okay, now it's going to be even harder to make her laugh today. I accept this, I say to myself. But please mark this day as a success for you, because you've made me very happy. I really thank you so much for your time today. So, anybody listening or watching, how can they get in touch with you, Morgan?
Come find me on social media. You can find me on my personal socials, which is Morgan Denicola. I hyphenated my married name with my last name. And then come find our foundation, Denicola Family Foundation, Instagram and on Facebook. And feel free to reach out. I'm a human and you're getting me, not some robot.
Denicola, Denicola Family Foundation.org. You're on Instagram, you're on Facebook, you're on Twitter. It's so glad we talked today. I look forward next time I'm in your geography. Perhaps we'll get a cup of tea.
Absolutely. Always reach out. I'd love that.
Thank you, Morgan. Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you'll find lots of resources and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations.